Episode 3, Changes in Lions Fans. Welcome back to the mental health edition of the Detroit Lions podcast. I am your host, Jeff Widenhofer. I'm a licensed mental health professional, and I have loved our Detroit Lions since I was a teenager in the early 90s. I am an ex-military guy, Navy helicopter pilot, did a number of deployments to the Middle East. Today, I work for the federal government as a psychotherapist and mental health counselor. Everything I say here is my own opinion. It does not reflect the policies or viewpoints of any federal department or government agency. I've been thinking about doing this kind of presentation for about a year and a half, a little over actually. It was around that time that it occurred to me, this is all different as a Lions fan. Everything is changed. It took a while to get some perspective on it, though. As is always the case in life, as we age, as we transition through experiences, we are constantly learning and adapting if we're paying attention and willing to adapt. For me, and I wonder what your experience is, but for me, it was after the Jets game in the 2022 season. I don't know if you remember that game. I'm sure many of you do. Khalif Raymond returned a punt for a touchdown. And then in the fourth quarter, that Brock Wright pass from Jared Goff, right to left, up the field. It's like 50 plus or minus 50 yards for a touchdown. And we beat the New York Jets in New Jersey, where they play. And the reason that was significant is because the Lions had just beat the Jaguars and the Vikings handily. And now they beat the Jets and they reached 500. They were 7-7. After they were 1-6 that season. That shit was ridiculous. Coming back from 1-6. And I just realized, I remember after thinking, I was like, wow, these players really are different. Not the best roster in the NFL, but Brad Holmes and the front office are different. This coaching staff is different. And so looking forward, I was like, wow, maybe this offseason, free agents might be different. Maybe analysts and national pundits, their discussions might change. Maybe my approach to the draft, which is normally the big part of the season, could be different. So I had this epiphany, right? All this negative thinking that I was aware of, stereotyping, assumptions of failure, the propensity to just give up, all my anger, all my cynicism, it wasn't useful. I didn't want it. That was an epiphany for me. And so, if this was an off season like 2009, 2010, 2011, I would not be doing this because there was so much negativity coming from the team. I mean, do you remember that 2008 season? I'm sure if you were there, I bet you do. And like many of you, I detached, I disengaged, I avoided, I ignored, I left the whole scene of being a Lions fan. And it's what I did many times over the last couple of decades. A lot of cynicism. And the only hope that I felt was just hope. Hope that the Lions, something might turn it around. Some miracle might happen that everything can turn around. And the Lions were not supplying us with much hope. And so that hope was, I'll say, unfounded, right? I remember that draft, the 2009 draft, after the 2008 0-16 season. We had the number 1 pick because we really deserved it because they stunk. Who should they get? Matthew Stafford, he was who we got, but there were other people we were talking about too on these chat boards because I was there. Jason Smith, offensive tackle from Baylor, remember that? Aaron Curry, linebacker. Brian Cushing, linebacker. Darius Hayward-Bay, all these potential superstars, right? Unfounded hope. Unfounded hope. This year, this was not unfounded hope. Right now, it's not. It's not hope. I don't feel a lot of hope, or at least I'm not relying on it, right? What I feel now, I think, is confidence in this team and this organization. And that I can say, for me, and hopefully for many of you, my identity as a Lions fan has changed. And my experiences can now be different. I've never seen this happen with the Detroit Lions. I was there in the early 90s when they got to the NFC Championship, played Washington, right? Barry Sanders was there. He was transcendent player, but also a lot of other good players. Lomas Brown, Chris Spielman, Herman Moore, Jerry Ball. Remember all these guys? Lots of good wide receivers, defensive linemen, offensive linemen. That was an exciting time, right? But I don't think that was so much a culture-wide, team-wide, franchise-wide change in its fabric. Barry Sanders was frickin' transcendent. That dude could turn a game around by himself, and that's one thing a lot of us relied on. I think this is different. And in the first episode, I talked a little bit about what psychotherapy and counseling is and why it helps. And I'll start here. Of course, what I'm doing here is not actual therapy, but it could be called a therapeutic discussion, talking through some ideas and concepts and digging in a little deeper than most NFL-related programming goes. This is not offensive analysis, defensive explanation, player evaluations, salary cap prospecting, and predictions on the season. That's not what I'm trying to do here. You get plenty of that from other places. Chris and Riz and all the guys on this podcast do a great job of it. This is hopefully, though, an interesting discussion about our favorite team and a sport that we love that goes a little bit deeper than surface level. Surface level is great. That's where most of us live and spend our days and interact with other people. But if you're like me, sometimes you're really into this stuff. Like, you really love it. Feels fucking good, right? With these Detroit Lions. There's a lot to get into these days and a lot to feel good about. So I want to take this discussion a little bit deeper. And when I talk about psychotherapy, when I explain it to some new clients, I explain it like this. It's a two-part process. First, it's going to take a little bit of time, but we are going to learn, me too, along with you, are going to learn to face a difficult truth or difficult truths in your lives. And that can be all kinds of things, internal things as well as things that happened in the past. And there's reasons why we have trouble. We humans are not good at facing our truths. I'm not going to explain all that right now. I'm sure some of you can think of a few reasons right now. But sometimes we need help facing that, identifying it, getting through our obstacles and our avoidance and seeing truth. And it's hard to understand what's going on sometimes. And we're not, even if we do see part of it or all of it, we're not willing to jump into it and face it yet, right? Because some part of our conscious and our subconscious knows this is going to be difficult. This might hurt, right? So sitting with someone, a counselor, who is non-judgmental and who is not tied to our patterns of thinking, our belief systems, our way of approaching problems in the past, our habits, right? Our family expectations, our cultural expectations, the usual way of thinking and behavior. Sometimes sitting with someone who is not tied to those things and hearing their non-judgmental, non-loyal perspective can be really insightful. And not just talking through it, just like some smart guy intellectualizing everything, but also feeling it. There's a deep emotional experience in therapy often. And I hope for any of you who go through therapy, me included, right? And I'm not necessarily talking about trauma therapy here, but I hope, I guess I am thinking about trauma therapy here. If you do go through something like that, I hope you go with someone, I hope you go through with someone who can sit with you in those tough moments when the shit's getting real. Right? When things are being felt. Hope you have a counselor who is willing to feel some of that with you, because that can be profound and healing for many people. Back to the process of therapy, what it is for some people. Face a difficult truth, number one. Then, number two, we learn, we figure out, we see what our options are. Right? What are the questions that come up now? How can we influence, affect, impact our situation moving forward? How can we change? Because we all get stuck sometimes. There are experiences and feelings and thoughts that are just tied up sometimes. And sometimes that stuff gets tangled over years, right? And, sitting with that non-judgmental, non-stuck person and hearing their reflection and response, suddenly we create new neural pathways. I'm going neuroscience on you here, okay? Ways of thinking about our situations, new ways to approach problems, new ways to sit with the certain feelings, new ways to manage our impulses, right? Things that negatively affect our relationships and work and health. So therapy is not about pity. It is not about becoming some strange out of touch version of ourselves. It's about, a lot of times, it's really about seeing truth and facing it. Lions fans, are you with me here? You kind of feel where I'm going? Stepping up to truths and realities about ourselves with the intention of changing or adapting in some good way. Really, it's about growing up and growing into new contexts. Because in the old contexts, we oftentimes would suffer. We would just endure our problems and respond with behaviors and not try to change really root causes and the really what's going on. We would just cope. Coping is a really important word in my work. We all do it. All humans do it in different ways. We do it because life is just not perfect. It never is. We're going to hit ups and we're going to hit downs. And the word coping is used in both positive and negative and neutral contexts. But here's some ways that NFL fans, like in the past, Lions fans, might have coped. Okay, here's one. Tell me if you can relate to this at all. Throw back a beer or a six-pack, when I get home. But this is not necessarily, this is just in our regular lives, not NFL related, right? Come home and throw a few down. About getting angry and throwing something, or just, fist ever hit the wall or a table, right? And then we say, oh, I feel better after I did that. That's a way we're coping with frustration inside of us. Avoidance, you ever avoid situations? I work with a lot of people who just will not go to the grocery store. And they don't have to today. They can survive and eat and get food delivered to them. But what about family get-togethers? What about community events? Here's another way we cope. I just don't talk to that person anymore, right? A friend, a relative, a coworker, a parent, a kid. Do you see what I'm getting at here? We do these things to cope because they help in the short term. There's a function that with these behaviors serve a function. They help us avoid difficult interactions and difficult things that we experience inside of us during those interactions. Difficult feelings. So I want to talk more in depth about some of the ways that us Lions fans might have coped. Okay. Next, I'm going to talk about dysfunctional thought and behavior patterns. Dysfunctional thought and behavior patterns, in particular defense mechanisms, I'm going to talk about that don't serve us well. We do them and we get into the habit of doing these things for reasons, because they're functional, but there's also accompanying consequences that do not always serve us, right? Perhaps these consequences harm us in some way, harm our relationships, harm our health. And so functional behaviors and thoughts can become dysfunctional. So let's get into thinking behavior patterns that are popularly called cognitive distortions. These are in the realm of dysfunctional thought and behavior patterns and defense mechanisms. I'm going to talk about jumping to conclusions, catastrophization, displacement, sublimination, and then repression, avoidance, and denial. Okay? These are defense mechanisms. Jumping to conclusions. Do you ever do this at a Lions game or watching a Lions game, right? They lost. It must be because of Jared Goff. He's terrible. We need a new quarterback right now. Right? Or they picked a running back. They don't know what they're doing. That's a wasted pick. An inside linebacker, they screwed up. They shouldn't have done that. They traded TJ Hawkinson. Well, that was dumb because he's good. Jared Goff has to play in the cold. Well, that's a loss. I've heard national analysts say that. Even though a year and a half ago in Green Bay, that was not a loss. How about when we experience those things, we take a breath, we check our context. We might start to change that reaction to something else. Here's another defense mechanism, catastrophization. It's kind of like jumping to conclusions, but it's the most severe version of it. We go to worst case scenario. All right, like this. As soon as the other team makes a play, a first down, a touchdown, interception, well, that's it. That's a loss. This team sucks. Jared Goff is cooked. Dan Campbell can't coach. Heard these things? Said these things? All right. Do you see how this is a defense or protective mechanism? Instead of sitting with the pain, the disappointment, we'll grasp blame, negativity, shut ourselves down emotionally, try to shift the pain to something else because it hurts. And sometimes going to anger and negativity in a way feels better in the short term, at least, than actually sitting with the disappointment and facing it. facing that difficult truth, right? Under Matt Patricia, coaching staff is not good. They don't have much of a chance. They are not going to make the playoffs. If I would have just accepted that earlier on, maybe I wouldn't have dealt with so much disappointment, anger, and frustration. Or maybe that's okay, because that's what the NFL is, and that's why the highs feel so good. I don't know. I just want to break this open a little bit. Acceptance, right? Maybe the team tried its best. Maybe the cornerback on that other team just made a really great play. And sometimes we lose a close game. The other team made a play. Okay, here's another defense mechanism, displacement. This is when we shift our frustration kind of from the source to another object or person. Think about someone who comes home and loses their job, right? Comes home and does those things, those coping mechanisms that I talked about, or gets angry, slam the table with your fist, yell at somebody, okay? We put negativity onto something else, right? Ever see this happen at Ford Field? Yes, I have, many times. What about late Sunday after a loss? Right? Taking out on other people on the message boards, on the Slack chat. Not too much there. That's one thing I really like about it. Ever get snappy or moody with someone at home? So here's another one. Sublimination. This is when we do something productive, or as the definition says, socially acceptable, to get away from our bad feelings. And this is an avoidant behavior. All these are really avoidant behaviors. Sublimination. Like, ever do or see someone do excessive cleaning when they're frustrated? Excessive shopping? Excessive working out? Putting in excessive effort into their work and their identity at work or in some other place, rather than facing what's going on. I did this with the draft many years. In the 3/4 of the way through all those bad seasons, start following the draft in November, start looking at players, and I would feel that hope. Okay, maybe this is good. This is good. Yeah, this is great, because probably if we pick this one guy and maybe this guy, then maybe we'll have a chance to get a wild card next year, right? And I would learn a lot about all those draftees. And the final one I'm going to talk about, repression, avoidance, and denial. Those are all kind of present in everything the ones I've mentioned earlier, but the point I want to make about repression and avoidance and denial, I don't need to explain it. I think I've talked about this kind of concept throughout the first 2 episodes. All I'm going to say about it here is the reason they can be problematic, one reason, is because they can lead to cynicism and resentment. And those are ugly emotions. I work with another counselor who I heard him tell other people that resentment is like drinking poison to hurt the other person. I like that metaphor. Makes me sit and think about what's really underneath what I'm doing. Okay. And in my life, cynicism and resentment do not lead to feeling good stuff, contentment, happiness, joy, love, good community, good relationships. They don't. They work against it. Okay. And so now I'm going to walk through the Lions' history and just maybe have you think about some of those concepts that I just mentioned. So I'll walk through recent Lions history with an eye on how we came to be cynical, resentful, defensive, impulsive. Our responses now might be related to things that happened 20 years ago. Remember the early 2000s? Steve Mariucci, Joey Harrington, Charles Rogers, Roy Williams, Kevin Jones, remember that guy? Sean Rogers, Dominic Riola, good players, lots of good players there. During that tenure, 2003 to 2005, they went 5-11, 6-10, and 5-11. That sucks. Not much good happening there. Okay, the next regime, 2006 to 2008. Rod Marinelli, coach, right? Pad level, pound the rock. Remember Ernie Sims, Gerald Alexander, Teddy Lehman, Daniel Bullocks, IAF. I'm not going to try to pronounce his name. Gosder Cherilus, Jordan Dyson. Remember these guys? Good players. They went 3-13. Sucks. Next season, they started off 6-2 with John Kitten at quarterback. Whoa, I remember that. I was following that. That was awesome. Finished that season 7-9. Ooh. They finished that season. Let me do the math here. 1-7. That was the end of the season of that season. The next year under Rod Marinelli, 0-16. Ooh. Not doing so well here. Okay. And I didn't even talk about the years before Steve Mariucci. Okay, if we're moving forward here now. 2009, Jim Schwartz comes in. Gunther Cunningham, Matthew Stafford, Brandon Pettigrew, Louis Delmas, DeAndre Levy. Remember Derek Williams? Ooh, he was a hot one on the message boards. And Ndamukong Suh, Javid Best, Nick Fairley, Titus Young, Michael LeSure, Riley Reef, Ryan Broyles, Ezekiel Ansah, Darius Slay, Larry Warford, Devin Taylor. Okay, under Schwartz, 2-14. Ugh. 6-10. Ugh. Next year, they went 10-6. Had all that strong defense. That was a fun year. Got the playoffs, lost to the Saints. Next 2 seasons under Schwartz, 4-12, 7-9. Okay, moving next era. Jim Caldwell, 2014 to 2017. Eric Ebron, oh boy. Let the message board discussion begin. Kyle Van Noy, Travis Swanson, remember that, center? Laken Tomlinson, of course, remember him. He's still out there. Amir Abdullah, he's still out there. Remember that game against the Chargers? 25-yard run touchdown. I think it was one of the first games of the season. I was all, yeah, we got to run it back. Didn't really turn out great. Well, he just had some injuries. Good player, though. Taylor Decker, Ashawn Robinson, Graham Glasgow. We know these guys. Jared Davis and Tease Tabor. There were a lot of great players in there, okay? On all those free agents under Jim Caldwell. Anquan Bolden, Marvin Jones, Golden Tate, Glover Quinn, Haloti Ngata. Had some good teams there. 11-5 his first season. Playoffs. Lost to the Cowboys. Remember that game? Kelvin Johnson. And that lack of a call. Okay. Next year, 7-9. Well, too bad. Next year, 9-7. Barely squeaked into the playoffs. Lost to the Seahawks. They were a really good team that year. Next year, 9-7 and missed the playoffs. Then, 2018 to 2020, the Quinn Tricia era. Dad, do we have to go over it? Yes, I'm at least to go over the records. I'm not going to go over the players because we still have a lot of these guys, well, some of these guys around. But the record under Matt Patricia, Bob Quinn was 6-10, 3-13, and 5-11. Ugh. So a lot of good players, a lot of good coaches during those years. But there's, the record. A lot of lean years, a lot of tough years. Some good years. But look at that record over that massive sample size. Right? I just went over almost 20 years. This is partly why we are who we are. Because of who we were. It's why the phrase or the word, the term lionized got invented. SOL. And I'm not talking shit out of luck, even though it might be synonymous. And I remember hearing Colin Cowherd on his radio show. He would always say, Detroit's Detroit. Meaning they ain't going to do shit in the end. They might have some good players. They might make some noise, but they are not going to do nothing in the end. Okay? So where are we now? Going back to all those previous behaviors, thought patterns, dysfunction, and negative reactions to all that dysfunction. All our defense mechanisms, coping mechanisms, jumping to conclusions, catastrophization, displacement, sublimation, repression, avoidance, denial, misplaced, unfounded hope every year. Now, we, the Lions fan base, can have confidence in coaching, players, organizational culture. We can have confidence that they will fight, they will not give up, and they got players that can win one-on-one battles around the field, both sides of the ball, all 3 sides of the ball. We have confidence from results. not from unfounded hope. Right? I'm watching the Jets this year. I just don't know. I'm watching the Bears. There's a lot of people predicting them to do a lot of great things. They got a rookie quarterback. I'm not going there. They might be good. Caleb Williams might be really good. But this is his rookie season. Like, let's step back. Let's slow down a little bit, even though that fan base, they want to feel something good, just like we did all those years. But look at all these new behaviors that we see at games, right? And in the playoffs, cheering when Matt Stafford and then Baker Mayfield were receiving the play in their headset. If you watched the game on TV, the announcers were talking about this, and the crowd was doing it, just making all this noise as the play. You see these quarterbacks, like, their faces are kind of twitched, and they're trying to concentrate, and they're also trying not to show their frustration and their anxiety and their stress. Do you remember the booing at the Stafford family, or maybe I think it was at Kelly and, first off, Matthew? I love that. Not because anyone's booing at kids. Of course, that's not what people were doing. Right? But how sort of out of touch was Kelly Stafford, thinking she was going to come back to Ford Field and be welcomed at the first playoff game in like 30 years, where her husband was coming to spoil all our good intentions and excitement. Of course, we're not going to fucking welcome you in. Of course, we're going to do some friendly booing because we want Matt Stafford defeated. And we got that. Give me a break. That was really funny. I don't look too deep into that. I hope the family's feelings were not hurt. That's not at all what anybody wants. It's not what I want, for sure. But yeah, boo Matt Stafford. Hell yeah. You come back here, get the fuck out of here, man. Look at some more behaviors that are good. Chanting Jared Goff, home and away games. Fourth quarter confidence now. I see it. I love it. It's really cool. It's really cool to feel it too. That matters for our community, right? And the players. I'm inspired to do more of that good stuff. I think this is what it feels like to have a little more joy, content, satisfaction, connection with each other. I think this is part of it. That 49ers loss was hard, but I also felt pride. I felt a lot of satisfaction. I felt a lot of gratitude that I got to enjoy the 2023 season of the Detroit Lions. God dang, that was fun, right? Maybe if we turn into the Buffalo Bills and just keep getting close, but never, ever, year after year, decade after decade, can't win a Super Bowl, maybe some more anger and cynicism and resentment will develop. And that's okay, right? That's different. But that fan base, the Bills fan base, also enjoys their games. They're in it. They're in it for the good stuff. They might boo a result, and unfortunately, there's probably 31 teams every year that boo the result. So I don't know if that booing is really that significant. Okay, but they're not booing the entire thing. And the Bills do have to face Patrick Mahomes every year. That sucks. Just got to accept that, I guess. So, are you able to watch an important game this year and not lose your shit when it goes south? Right? Watch yourself. Just notice yourself as you're jumping to conclusions or catastrophizing, displacing, using sublimination and displacement. Or watch your avoidance. Help others. Be there for each other, right? Point it out in a funny way at the right time, at an appropriate time. Because, god dang, this is also fun, right? And I'm still working on this for myself, okay? And what I would rather see in myself and you all and the crowds that attend games is a little more satisfaction, gratitude, excitement for the next challenge, even after we lose an important play or series or game. Right? Less of the booing, blame shifting, and dysfunction. Because like our fearless leader Dan Campbell said, we've had enough of that shit. Let's go Lions.